Hey, welcome to this video demonstration of PVC practical build for your state test. There's an easy way and a hard way to do this. Let's go over the easy way. First of all, you're going to need to gather your tools. You'll need a hacksaw or a PVC cutter, something to cut your PVC with. You're also going to want a reamer because you're going to need to clean up the burrs when you've cut your pipe. Make sure it's nice and clean. This state test, they will look to see if you have reamed your pipe. So that reaming on the inside is a really important step. Now, as I'm reaming, I'll usually reach in there and just make sure I don't feel any lip. There's no grab as I'm feeling the edge of the pipe there. Once it's clean, we're ready to start gluing. Now let's look at fittings for a minute. As we build this, we have to take into account fitting allowance. Fitting allowance is the amount of space taken up by the fitting. So if we're going for center to center measurements, we have to subtract this space that the fitting takes up. You can see it's marked there in between the lines. That is our fitting allowance. Now, as we examine this fitting allowance, it looks like it's about 3/4 of an inch. I can do that on paper, you know, take my center to center, subtract off 3/4 or so. But there is a faster way to do this, and I'll show you that as we build this. Let's have a look at a 90 elbow. Manufacturers often have a seam. You can look closely, you'll find a centerline seam from when they were created. It's a good idea to kind of eyeball that, bring that together. That seam is the center line we're trying to follow and create our measurements from. If we measure from the outside of the fitting, it's too long. From the inside of the fitting, it's too short, so we want to get right to that center point. Once we've calculated our measurements for the project, we can start to build. Let's get right to it. We're going to prime and glue the cap right onto a piece of pipe. And remember to use primer and glue. Now, sometimes you might not in the field, but for this practical, yeah, we're going to want to do primer and glue because this is going to be pressurized when they put a test on.
Yo, don't be a slobster, a purple primer monster. Keep your area clean, if you know what I mean.
Now we're going to glue this cap right onto a piece of pipe. I don't know exactly where it's going to end up with my measurements, but if I glue the cap on, that cap is where it's going to be. The cap has a fitting allowance, but I don't even have to subtract that if it's glued on because it's already as far onto that pipe as it's going to be. But I do need to make sure that this base piece is going to end up at the correct center. So again, I'm building my 1-inch base here. Let's talk about taking measurements. You can use a measuring tape, but you're going to be so much more accurate if you're using a framing square. The framing square is not going to bend or move. The end of your tape can wiggle 1/8 of an inch. So use a framing square, you'll be so much more accurate. Let's get a framing square out, and I'm going to put that cap right up against the side of the framing square. And I'm going to measure and mark over onto that pipe exactly where my center will end on the pipe. Now let me point out, this is not my cut. This is just the center where it's supposed to line up. So I've got the center of the T to the end of the cap has to be a certain measurement. But now I can look at this and say, all right, line this up with the T. And let's see about how far into that fitting will my pipe go. And this is just an estimation, but I can put another line. That line is going to be my cut, not the center line. I'm going to cut it here, and I may cut off just a little extra, maybe 1/8 of an inch. But that way, when I glue this together, my center should line up exactly where it's supposed to go.
You can see here that I'm writing all over my pipe and fittings. You don't have to do that. In fact, it might look nicer when you turn in your project if you don't. Obviously, I'm just doing this to demonstrate so that you know exactly what I'm talking about.
All right, now I can do my cut. I'm gonna grab my cutters, and I'm gonna cut it just shy of that line. If I come a little bit short, it makes it easier to fit this together. When you're pushing a PVC pipe into a PVC fitting, sometimes that glue binds up. Shaving it a little shy will make it easier for me to get my center. I'm gonna prime and glue this together. I'm just gonna stick it in. And then I'm going to have to make sure to take the time and check my measurement. Too many times students will just be building, they don't check their measurements. Right now is the time, the glue is wet. I need to make adjustments. If it's a little off, I can check it again, and then make sure that that end to center is exactly the way I want it.
By the way, I also do not typically recommend that you write on your square. This square was kind of old and rusty and beat up, and it was hard for me to see what I was doing. So I put these lines on here just for demonstration purposes, but again, don't write on your tools unnecessarily.
As that glue is setting. Let's do the other side. I'll do the same thing. I'm going to ream it. I'm going to glue the cap on the end of it. I'm not worried about the fitting allowance for that cap. Just glue it right on because I'm going to do the same thing and just mark the center and then mark back to the fitting. But once that's on there, that's as far into the pipe as it's going to go. Take that to the square, mark my center, hold it up to my T. Once again, I'm estimating where that's going to end inside the fitting. I mark where my cut will be. I can go to my cut, go just a little bit shy. This is going to help me build out my whole base. This is the 1-inch section of the project. I'll get my primer and glue again. Oh, don't forget reaming. Sometimes I get in a hurry, forget reaming. Don't forget reaming. I've reamed it. I'm going to prime. I'm going to glue that together. And then once again, double checking measurements. Always double checking the measurements. Once again, this one needed just a little bit of adjustment. As I see that, I can pull that out. The glue's still wet. I can make those adjustments and get it exact. I want it exact. End to center and end to end. I'm going to look over the whole thing from one cap to the other and see, did I hit my marks? Now's the time to double check, triple check, make sure that that base is exactly the way I want it, so that as I continue building, I don't have to worry about the base anymore. I know I nailed it. I've got my centers. So now, once we've got the base built, we can move on to the 3/4 sections of this project. And in similar fashion, I could sit there and subtract fitting allowances for my male adapter on the end. But after having reamed it, I'm just going to glue it on, because then it is what it is, wherever it ends up. That does save me time on doing math. I could sit there and crunch numbers, but this is going to save me some time. I'll take that male adapter right up onto my square again, and I'm going to mark the center. That's going to be the center of my fitting. I can bring my 90 over, and just like I was doing with the T, I'm going to line up the center, and then I'm going to mark my cut. That's how far the pipe will go into the fitting. I'll cut that just a little bit shy and ream it. Now I'm ready to prime and glue. I'm going to prime the 90, prime the pipe, glue the 90, glue the pipe. I will fit this together, and once again I am going to check against the square. I'll put the male adapter right against the side of the square and then look at the center of the 90. I need to make adjustments. I can do that. I want to get this exact from end to center, and once I'm satisfied, I can move on. I can start gluing on the next one. I'll ream another piece of pipe. I'm just going to glue that right in to the other side of the 90. Now you notice I haven't taken time to calculate out the actual fitting allowance for my 90 either. I'm just gluing. But I do know where my center is. I can lay that right onto my square and see where that ends up. I'm right lined up with the center on my square, and I can come over and mark the next center. I know what that measurement is. I can see where that's going to be in relation to my fitting, and I can come back and mark my cut. Again, my fitting allowance is accounted for, but I didn't have to do any math, so I'm moving fast. Let's talk strategy for a minute. You saw I built the base. Now I'm building the 90 at the end. I like to build flat portions of this project and then assemble those together. So far I have the base, I've got the 90. Now I'm going for this offset, my 45s. I'm going to glue this 45 on to a piece of pipe, find the center of my 45. I'm going to mark that so I can see where it's at. I'm going right for the center of that fitting, and I'm going to lay that over my square right at the edge, and that's going to allow me to see from the center of that fitting how far over I need to go. I know what my measurement is, so I measure the center, and then I'm going to use my T. This one comes into the T. I'll mark the center of my T, line up the centers, and then once again I can see where my cut needs to be. This is my fitting allowance, right? I've got my center. I've moved over to where that pipe will end inside the T, and I'm going to cut it there so that that will be able to fit right into my T, and my center should line up. Let's glue the other side. I'm going to take that 45 and just glue another piece on. Once again, you'll notice I'm not taking time to actually calculate for fitting allowances. I'm gluing pipe, but I know what to do. When I take that 45, I'm going to set it on my square again. I'm going to find the center of where that's going to end up as it connects to the 90, mark the center, and then I'll get a 90, mark back from the center of the 90 to where I'll need to make my cut. This accounts for my fitting allowance. I'm ready to make my cut. I'll come just shy of my mark. I'll take care of final preparations here. Of course, I'm going to need to ream this pipe, both sides, so I'm going to ream this out. I've got this section of my 45 built, and really now I'm ready to assemble the whole thing, right? I've got my 3 parts. I've got my base that's ready, my end with the 90, and my 45 for the offset. It's going to come up out of the T. So let's just start by gluing that in. I'm going to glue it right into the T. I've already measured. I know my centers should line up close, but once again, as I glue this and as that glue is wet, I'm going to set that in and then I'm going to measure and double check my centers. I'll take just a minute to eyeball this because I want to make sure that it's straight. It's like coming out perpendicular to that T, and then I can just lift my square up here, hold it up to my centers, and kind of see how I did as far as lining this up. This isn't as easy as just laying it on the table and measuring as we did with the other centers, but I can make adjustments here. And in this case, I'm a bit long, so I'm going to have to pull this apart. Sometimes it's going to happen. I'm just too long. I've got to shave it off. Now, sometimes a PVC cutter can cut it off, but when it's real close, I may have to use a hacksaw. Just take off an 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch. But it's worth it. It's worth it to be accurate. It's going to take some time, but I'm going to do that. I've cut off that little piece so that I can try this again. I'll make sure to ream before I glue. But then as I glue this in, I'm just going to do the same thing, square it up, make sure it looks good, and double check measurements with the square. Now it's accurate. Now it's looking good. It's not too long as it was before. I'm ready to move on. The last part here is I've got to fit the 90. It's going to offset to the right. So I'm going to prime and glue that and do that for both sides of the pipe. Now this is the one fitting where everything's going to happen at once. I'm going to glue both sides of the fitting and both pipes, and I'm just going to hit it all at once. And as that comes together, I'm going to need to just really carefully watch my centers. Now it's important, of course, to make sure my offset comes over the right direction. Don't glue it on facing the wrong way. You'll fail your project immediately. But I get that to the right. That's according to the plan. And now I'm just going to eyeball this out and make sure that everything looks square and plumb. I don't want anything crooked. And I do that while the glue is wet, right? Make sure it's all good. Now I'm going to take a minute to just double check my measurements on center to center between fittings. I can make adjustments as needed. Before I hand this to my instructor, I'm going to look this over. I may block it up with some bricks and measure up from the table, double checking measurements wherever I can. Now is the time to make sure this is totally accurate and make adjustments before I turn it in. If I settle for imperfection in practice, I may end up with imperfection on the state test. That's not what I want. Make sure to clean up when you're done. Good luck with your projects as you practice this exercise of building practicals. You will be ready for your state test.